You're doing something absolutely incredible right now, just effortlessly decoding sounds into these complex ideas. But have you ever stopped to think about how we even begin to understand this uniquely human superpower? Well, today we're going to dive into the history of linguistics. It's really a story of these huge, revolutionary ideas that completely changed how we see language and, how we see ourselves. So let me start by asking you a question. What's the most complex, maybe the most brain power intensive thing you do every single day? Is it, I don't know, navigating a tough project at work, driving in nightmare traffic, maybe solving a really tricky puzzle? Go on, take a second. Really think about it. Okay, the answer? It might not be what you think. It could actually be just talking. Yeah, seriously. Every single sentence you say is a tiny miracle of neurology. It's this incredibly complex tapestry of sound and structure and meaning, all woven together in milliseconds. And that is the story we're going to get into, how we even started to unravel that miracle. All right, so here's our roadmap. First, we're going to start way back in the ancient world, looking at the shift from gods to grammar. Then we'll jump forward to see how we cracked the code of language families. After that, we'll look at this one huge idea that reframed language as its own system. From there, it's a deep dive into the mind with the cognitive revolution. And finally, we'll wrap up by looking at the biggest questions that linguists are still trying to answer today. Okay, let's kick things off. Our story begins way, way back in the ancient world. And this is where we see the first huge shift in thinking. People started moving away from these myths about language being a gift from the gods and started looking at it scientifically, really analyzing its structure. So, first things first, let's get a clear definition on the table. What is linguistics? Well, it's the scientific study of language. The key word there is scientific. It's not about treating language like poetry or an art form, but as this complex, structured system, something we can actually observe, describe, and analyze. And believe me, this idea is ancient. We're talking around 500 BCE in India, where a grammarian named Panini created this unbelievably precise and systematic breakdown of Sanskrit grammar. I mean, it's just astonishing. Then you have ancient Greece with Plato debating what words even are, and after that, the Roman grammarians took those Greek ideas and adapted them for Latin. The real point here, the big takeaway, isn't just that this stuff is old. It's that for the very first time, people were treating language as a human system, something with its own internal logic, not just some random gift from the gods. All right, so for centuries, the main focus was just describing one language at a time, in isolation. But the next revolutionary leap, that came when scholars started actually comparing them. And what they found were these incredible connections that had been hiding in plain sight the whole time. I mean, sure, it was pretty obvious that languages like Spanish and Italian were related, right? You can just hear it. But what about English, Russian, and Hindi? Could they possibly share a common ancestor? For hundreds of years, that was a total mystery, and people usually just fell back on myths instead of science to explain it. And this is the big aha moment. It's 1786, and there's a British judge in India named Sir William Jones. He's studying Sanskrit, Greek, and Latin, and he notices this connection between them, a similarity that, in his words, could not possibly have been produced by accident. So he proposes this totally radical idea for the time. They must have all come from some single common source. And boom, that one observation basically gave birth to the entire field of historical linguistics and this whole idea of language families. So after about a century of scholars just meticulously mapping out the history of all these language families, the third big revolution comes along. And it's thanks to a Swiss linguist, Ferdinand de Saussure, who basically came in and said, "Hold on a second, everybody. I think we're missing the forest for the trees here." And Saussure's analogy for this was just brilliant. He said that studying the history of a language is kind of like studying the history of chess, learning how the rules for the bishop changed over hundreds of years. And yeah, that's interesting stuff, but it doesn't tell you how to play the game right now. He argued that we really need to focus on the language as it exists in the present, as a complete working system. And this idea led to his most famous concept. He made this key distinction between the abstract system of rules. Think of it like the shared rule book for a language, which he called langue, and the actual things people say, the specific sentences we speak, which he called parole. For Saussure, the real science wasn't in the individual sentences, but in studying the underlying system, the langue. And this focus on structure, which we call structuralism, would go on to dominate the field of linguistics for the next 50 years. But that dominance, well, it wasn't going to last forever. In the middle of the 20th century, A young linguist named Noam Chomsky came along and sparked a completely new revolution. He turned the focus away from language as a social structure and took it deep inside the human mind itself. Okay, just think about this for a second. Have you ever heard a little kid say something like, "I bringed my toy"? They've definitely never heard an adult say bringed, so they can't just be mimicking, right? So where did that word come from? It's like, it suggests they have this internal set of rules for how to make past tenses, and they're actively generating language, not just parroting what they hear. This right here, this is the exact puzzle that totally obsessed Chomsky, and his answer was radical. He proposed that the basic framework for language, what he called universal grammar, is an innate part of our biology. It's not something we learn from a totally blank slate. No, he said it's a faculty that just grows in the mind, kind of like an organ grows in the body. We are literally born with a blueprint for language. So, his theory, called generative grammar, basically works like this. We start with our innate universal grammar. That allows us to form a deep structure, which is just the core meaning we want to get across. Then our brain applies specific rules for our language, he called these transformations, to create the surface structure, and that's the final sentence we actually say out loud. The huge revelation here? The human mind isn't just a tape recorder playing back what it's heard, it's a creativity engine, constantly generating brand new sentences. And Chomsky's revolution really set the stage for all the big questions that linguists are still wrestling with today. The field is nowhere near finished. In fact, you could argue the biggest mysteries are still ahead of us. I mean, for one, there's the deepest mystery of all. Where did language even come from? Was it this slow, gradual evolution? Or was it some sudden genetic leap? How in the world did our ancestors go from simple animal calls to the infinitely creative system we have today? We just don't know. The answer is still out there. Then there's the whole other frontier of neurolinguistics. We know language happens in the brain, obviously, but where and how? Right now, scientists are using amazing tools like fMRIs to map the actual neural pathways that let us understand and produce speech with just breathtaking speed and accuracy. And of course, there's the big one, maybe the defining question of our time, AI. These large language models can mimic human language with stunning accuracy, right? But do they actually understand it? Can an algorithm ever truly grasp meaning and intent and context the way a human child can? That is a massive fundamental question at the heart of both linguistics and AI today. So, you see, from ancient grammar all the way to the code of the mind, the study of language has always been a study of ourselves. It's not just some tool we use, it is the very fabric of our thoughts, of our societies. The next great leap in linguistics, whatever it is, won't just tell us more about language. It's going to reveal something new and fundamental about what it means to be human. So what do you think that next revolution will be?